Hari-kirtana, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today is Bhakti Wednesday. So today I'm actually going to be fielding a question that I've got from the audience a number of times over the past, couple of months or so, asking me to talk about karma. What is karma? What isn't karma? And although this is something I've talked about a little bit before, both in terms of astrology, because it's a question that astrologers have often enough, but also people who are interested in yoga have the question as well. So I've talked about it in various places, but I thought there'd be no better person to talk about it than one of my own teachers, Hari-kirtana. So my friend Hari is here today to speak with us about the topic of karma, what it is, what it isn't, maybe some of the misconceptions. So that's what we're doing for today. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Hari on now. Hey, Hari, thanks for being here.
acyuta-bhava, thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you, and it's nice to be able to discuss a topic that a lot of people have questions about.
Yeah, just a little bit of background. When I first started studying Bhakti Yoga, I was taking a yoga teacher training private apprenticeship with Hari, who was on staff at our yoga studio in Silver Spring, Maryland, as basically our yoga philosophy guy in the yoga teacher training program. And so it was, for me, really exciting to be sitting and talking yoga philosophy with Hari every day for a better part of a year. And one of the things that I spent a lot of time talking to Hari about was the subject of karma. As an astrologer, it's a subject that I've always been interested in, and it's always been something I continue to have questions about. And so Hari was really instrumental in not only helping me learn more about the path of Bhakti Yoga, but also as an astrologer, helping me learn more about what yoga philosophy has to say about karma, what it is and isn't. So I think it's really good to have you here, Hari. And I want to start off with a simple question for you. And you probably, I specifically didn't prepare you for it because I wanted your answer to be unscripted.
Okay.
So the question is, what karma isn't? So tell us one thing that karma is not. Start there, because I feel like we're going to get to what karma is, but I feel like there's so many misconceptions. So maybe we could start just by asking this pointed question: what karma is not? Fill in the blank.
This is a really good question. I am so accustomed to dealing with what karma is, and it's very, very smart of you to have not let me know that you were going to ask me this question.
Yeah, totally. I really wanted to know what you'd say.
Because now you've really stumped the band. What karma isn't, what karma is not. Is really hard to answer, because so much of our experience, what we've gone through in the past, what we're experiencing right now, what we're going to experience in the future, is all karma, or something very, very closely related to karma. The state of being that I'm currently experiencing comes to me by way of a reaction to a past action. The things that have happened to me in the past also, and those things have shaped who I experience myself to be right now. The events that will come my way in the future, also karma. The only way to say what isn't karma is activity on a spiritual platform. That is to say, not karma is karma yoga, how we act in such a way as to run the table on the storehouse of karmic reactions we have coming our way, such that we don't experience reactions to actions anymore. It sounds like something that defies Newtonian physics. And it does, because there's a difference, a categorical difference between action that generates a reaction, which is to say a material action, an action associated with the material world and the qualities of material nature that make up this world. And we may have to unpack a few of the phrases I'm using to describe this as we go along. And a transcendental action, an action that doesn't generate a reaction. And at a certain point, if we practice karma yoga, action that doesn't generate a reaction, it reaches a tipping point where it becomes bhakti yoga. And it's at that tipping point that we get to that which is not karma. So in other words, the answer to your question, now that I've sort of thought out loud, is that the only thing that's not karma is transcendental action.
There you go. Wow. Yeah. That was amazing. That was really cool to see you work through that. And then, yeah, so to simply summarizing, if I make sure I understand it, karma is not transcendental or spiritual activities or actions.
Right, which we now have to give a little bit of a definition to.
Yeah, you like how I did that? Was that fun?
Yeah. Sorry. Transcendental, there are a couple of things, that I feel like I should unpack, that while I'm thinking out loud, I may be using, some terminology that isn't familiar to everybody.
Yeah.
So a transcendental action is an action that is offered to Krishna, or the Supreme Person, the Supreme Being, in whatever personal form that one conceives of a Supreme Being. And I say personal form because to offer an action to someone requires that there's a person on the other end, on the receiving end of that action. And this is part of the power of Bhakti Yoga and the personal conception of a Supreme Being who we can have a relationship with. So that's what I mean by transcendental action. An action where the intention is to please the Supreme Person, as opposed to an action where we're looking to get something as a result of that action.
Does that mean that the only things that we really should be doing if we want to avoid karma is just like giving flowers to an altar?
Well, certainly there's no karmic reaction to putting flowers on your altar.
Right.
And that's a nice way to burn up the karma that we already have. However, you can do more than that. We can make almost everything that we do can be turned into a transcendental action by adding Krishna, or whichever name the Supreme Being goes by according to how you relate to the Supreme Person. Now in our particular Bhakti Yoga lineage, we are both devotees of Krishna. So I will run with that for the rest of the program here.
Everyone's familiar with that here on Bhakti Wednesday. We talk a lot about Krishna, so that's good.
Okay, so almost anything that we do, you can add Krishna to that, and now by changing the action to an action that has a selfish motivation, or even an altruistic material motivation, simply by adding an awareness of Krishna and by performing the action in such a way so that is ultimately intended to be pleasing to Krishna, it becomes a karma-free action, which means that what we do may not change substantially. Why we do it changes. And on one level, it's important to be aware of the impact of our actions and be accountable for that, to own the impact of our actions. But in Bhakti Yoga, the intention of the action gets more weight.
Mm-hmm.
So,
putting the kids to bed at night, how do you do that? How does that happen if you're trying to be a transcendentalist?
well, you can sing lullabies about Krishna. There are some very nice songs that I'm betting would help a very young person go to sleep. I'm assuming if you're putting them to bed, they're still really young. If you're a teenager, and you're still putting them to bed, then probably,
no amount of singing will help you.
Yes, right. Yeah, you may have to think of something else. But yes, little children, you're putting them to bed, so you sing them a lullaby. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Right. I sincerely hope that'll knock your kids right out. But that's a nice song about Krishna. It's made up entirely of Krishna's names. So you're thinking of Krishna as you put your child to bed. Your child is hearing Krishna's names. You're seeing your child in relationship to Krishna, aware of the fact that the same person, Krishna, is in your heart, is in their heart. It actually expands the whole nature of the relationship between a parent and child when you add Krishna in lots of different dimensions.
It sounds to me like, part of what we're talking about with creating transcendental activities and actions in our lives, the kind that are not creating more reactions, is it sounds to me like it's really about getting creative. It's like, how can I include some element of my faith, my love of God in what I'm doing? And there's not just one way of doing that. It's not just the rituals and the set things that one has to do. It's also about sort of getting creative in the moment with just how to add God to the mix.
Yeah, it's a little like playing Where's Waldo, except you're playing Where's Krishna. And you're doing it in your whole life. Our Parama Guru, Srila Prabhupada, once said, when you go for a walk in the woods, don't just see a tree, see Krishna. So a walk in the woods becomes even more, a walk in the woods is already miraculous. It becomes even more miraculous when you think of how Krishna is in each tree, how the tree is made of Krishna's energy, how all the living entities on that tree, which there are like more living entities on a single big tree than there are human beings on planet Earth. Krishna is completely cognizant of their existence, unlike us. So going for a walk in the woods is a good way to not pick up any karma. And now here's the thing about karma and being protected from karma. One of the really powerful things, which is a very important thing to know but not think we can exploit, is absolution. At towards the end of the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is explaining to Arjuna what the ultimate dharma is, he tells Arjuna, just surrender to me and I will protect you from all the negative reactions to your actions should such reactions occur. Don't fear. Don't worry about it. I'm going to protect you. It's really hard to move through the world without causing harm to another living being. It happens incidentally, even when we go to great trouble to avoid it. I go down to my garden and I get a couple of zucchinis, pick a bunch of blackberries or raspberries or whatever happens to be ready to go. And sometimes some little living entity is on whatever it is I bring to the house. Well, it's not going to live for very long in the house. It's right. A natural environment for that kind of living entity. And I do my best to return anything that gets in the house back to outside, back to nature. But sometimes it's just unavoidable. It's just like collateral damage from gardening. What to do?
Right.
Well, I'm going to offer that zucchini to Krishna. I'm going to cook something with it. I'm going to put together a zucchini dish or something, and I'm going to offer it to Krishna. The whole point of having the garden is so that we can grow food that we can offer to Krishna. And Krishna is going to protect me from the karmic reaction that would ordinarily have come about due to the harm I had done to another living creature, even though I didn't intend to do that harm. I normally would still be responsible for it to one degree or another. So this is another thing about karma and devotional yoga. As long as we're intending our actions to be an offering to Krishna, then any incidental bad karma that we would ordinarily generate, we get some special dispensation for, some divine intervention that negates that karmic reaction. Right. And it's an important thing to know that it's not something we can abuse. It's actually offensive to think, oh, I can do whatever I want, but I'm a devotee of Krishna, so I'll get forgiveness for it. It's not the same kind of vicarious atonement that we hear about in other traditions. There's still, the expectation that we take responsibility for our actions and that our actions are genuinely devotional, not that we think of this as some free pass to. Right.
It's not cheap grace.
Yeah. That's a good phrase for it. No cheap grace here.
Yeah. Okay. So the question that I get often, like all the time, and I've tackled it a few times in different episodes, but one of the questions that keeps coming, I don't want to live in a universe that is just a system of like impersonal actions and reactions that are like punitive, like you do something good, you get something good, you do something bad, you get something bad. Is that all that karma is? And I feel like, the way that you explained karma to me when we were studying together was much more than that. So maybe you could address that particular concern that people tend to have.
Yeah. And it's a reasonable concern that, we think of an impersonal universe with an impersonal automated system of arbitrary judgment of some kind. Because who's to say what's a good action and what's a bad action? Who's to say what deserves a reward and what deserves punishment? Different people have very different conceptions of these things. So, first of all, it's not arbitrary. There's a standard of righteousness in cosmic order. And you can learn about it. This is what spiritual wisdom texts are for, so that we can get an understanding of what constitutes action in harmony with cosmic order, otherwise known as good karma. And then actions that are out of harmony with cosmic order, well, the universe bounces back a disharmonious response, and that's called bad karma. So it's not just arbitrary. And with every law of nature, with every law, there's always somebody who's a law maker. So there's a person. So it's not just an impersonal universe that is handing down arbitrary judgments that we have to enjoy or suffer the experience of. It is also not. Here's now coming back to your first question. What is karma not? Karma is not an excuse for indifference towards other people's misfortune.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get to say, oh, well, just your karma, sucks to be you. We actually have a responsibility to mitigate the suffering of others to the best of our ability. Especially if one is a devotee of Krishna or aspiring to the path of bhakti yoga, then we are not interested in justice. We are interested in mercy. We are supposed to be agents of compassion. We let somebody else take care of justice. That's not our department. We live in the department of compassion. And therefore, irrespective of what someone's karma is or how they got it, we don't care about that. What we care about is how to assist someone to mitigate their suffering right now, and also how to look forward, how to give someone the opportunity to act in such ways to create a reaction in the future that will be wonderful rather than unfortunate. So that's another point about karma, is that it looks two ways. You know, you can look backward to explain how the past created the present. Even more importantly, we can look forward to understand how what we do right now creates our future.
There's a question that, you know, always comes along with the question I just asked you about karma, and if it's just this arbitrary thing. I think that this question is actually the underlying reason why people ask if it's just, I don't want to participate in this kind of arbitrary system of merit and punishment. Mm-hmm. The next question is like, how is it fair that someone can't understand the result they're getting? So for example, a young child, they get the result, they get sick at a young age. It might be karma blossoming from 3 lifetimes ago in this philosophy. We can't possibly have an understanding of, you know, what I did, you know, to receive this outcome. And I think that question is always asked right along the question about arbitrary merit and punishment and stuff like that. And I think what I heard you saying, and maybe you could comment further, is that it's really not necessarily the goal of studying yoga philosophy or practicing yoga is not so that we have some lucid understanding of past lives and the causal chains that have created things, and that we're going to go in and tinker with all of that to get good karma. In a sense, we want to go beyond good or bad karma, and that's why the standard is one of mercy and compassion. Like, I don't need to know why the 3-year-old's sick. I know that it's karma, but I don't need to know why or blame them or judge them. I just need to love them, and if I have some means of helping them, I need to help.
Right.
Is
that's pretty much our mood. You know, for the person who's experiencing misfortune due to a past activity, you know, as a child, sure, you're not going to understand much because you don't understand much of anything at this point. You can memorize anything, but you're not going to understand a whole lot. Later in life, it may become clear that if they remember being sick, they understand where that sickness came from the standpoint of it's a karmic reaction. You know, people ask, you know, why do we usually use children because we assume children are innocent because they just got here. They couldn't have done anything yet that would have generated a negative reaction.
Not my 6-year-old. She's had some past lives. I'm playing.
and your 6-year-old is already a very spiritually advanced person who would understand such a thing at such a young age. But yes, the whole concept of karma is linked to the concept of Atma, the eternal spiritual being inhabiting a temporary material body. And And so we will understand as adults who accept the idea of the law of karma that, okay, my child is sick right now because in a past life there was something that was done by this spirit soul inhabiting my child's body in previous lives that we don't even know how long ago this happened, because the way karma works is it's just like a tree. It doesn't, like you put a seed in the ground, you don't get an instant tree. It takes some time for the roots to settle in, sapling to grow. Eventually you get leaves and fruit. So we understand the reaction to be tied to an action from many, many previous lifetimes ago. And all we care about is, okay, how can I help them get better? How can I help them feel better? How can I help them get through this? Later on, we understand that illness, difficulties, accidents, things that happen to us, they're past reactions to past actions that we simply have to tolerate, with the understanding that someone didn't do this to us. Somehow or other, we invited this by our actions, and it's sensitivity training. We don't want someone else to suffer the same way. Therefore, we put up with it while being of service to others.
Right. And the I want to go back to what you were saying about, one of the ways to mitigate, to offer an alternative to karmic actions, transcendental activities, spiritual activities. And we were saying just kind of, it's like, just add Krishna, like a recipe, like just add a little Krishna.
Shake a little Krishna out of the Krishna shaker.
The idea, I want to be clear, because sometimes I'll get this from people in response, and I think it's a really intelligent response, which is, that sounds like what you're saying is like, kind of like, well, just worship God 24/7, otherwise bad stuff is going to happen to you. And I think it's not quite that either, is it? It's not. No. That's not really what's being said.
It's not quite that simple. In one sense, sure. If you're completely God conscious all the time and everything you do is done with no ulterior motive other than to please God, yeah, sure, then you're golden. So in one sense, it is simple. What we're not that simple. Very few people are operating on that level. So it's a matter of aspiration. It's a practice. To the extent that we dedicate ourselves to practicing that kind of God consciousness, to that extent we burn up our karma very, very quickly.
Almost like as a byproduct, though, not like it's the goal. It just happens.
No, it just happens. Yeah, that's exactly right. We, sometimes, and I'll bet in our previous discussions about astrology, you get the question after you tell someone, okay, here's your chart, here's what it says, here's what you have to look forward to. And then, the first thing that comes out of someone's mouth is, okay, now how do I change it?
Yeah, exactly.
How do I make it different? Yeah. And basically, like, if I understand this properly, it's by like asking, how do I move the stars into a different position?
That's right. Yeah.
And, that's not easy. I don't really think many people are going to be able to do that. So there's a certain, the karma that's right here, right now. Well, we can't change that. But the karma that's way off in the future, that still has a ways to go, that can be changed. That can or avoided altogether. We can burn that up. And it's a gradual process. It's not something that really happens overnight. So anyway, I want to get back to, I got off on a little bit of an astrology tangent, which is always very dangerous for me since I don't really know anything about astrology. But I want to get back to your original question, which now you're getting have to remind me.
Yeah, we were asking about if it's as simple as, just worship God and God will prevent bad things.
Yeah. It sounds simplistic, but it actually, it can be that simple. It sounds simplistic because of our conception of what it means to worship God, or our conception of who God is or what God is. So, if the God that we're worshiping is the judgmental God who's making these things happen to us because he doesn't think we're good people, that's going to be rough, because our worship is going to be based on fear of bad karma, fear of
Yes.
judgment, fear of the wrath of God. But karma is not the wrath of God. Karma is the reaction to our past actions that hopefully will sensitize us to the suffering of others. So we should never think of karma as the wrath of God, nor should we worship God in this kind of fear-based mentality of, I have to worship God or bad things will happen.
Right.
That's now I understand where you were going with this. No, we don't worry about our karma. We just focus on cultivating love of God, and that means having a conception of a God who's lovable and who's anxious to be in a relationship of love with us.
Yeah.
And then we let karma take care of itself. We tolerate whatever is coming our way, and we think, okay, whatever Krishna allows to happen to me is meant to bring me closer to him, because that's what we both want. He's anxious to have me come closer to him, and I am also endeavoring for that same objective. Therefore, good karma, bad karma becomes almost loses its meaning. We're just having experiences that Krishna is arranging for us to bring us closer to him. And sometimes that can be calamity, and sometimes that can be a party.
Yeah.
It can go either way.
But one could not have that perspective if one was not developing God consciousness, but to see God in everything, in every experience, in every event, in every person we know, in every reaction that comes our way. It's like the more we practice seeing God and connecting with God, and showing our love to God, in and through everything, my kids, my wife, but also, my altar, my mantra meditation, we kind of start doing that everywhere. It's like, it's as though that is what gives us the ability to have a different kind of experience with whatever karma may still be playing out.
Yes. The sum total of our absorption, the sum total of our practice, that includes sadhana, that includes relationships, that includes seeing every aspect of our lives in relationship with Krishna, that gives us the vision by which we can see how whatever happens to us is actually Krishna's mercy on us, as opposed to some punitive ordeal we have to go through on account of having been judged unworthy of good fortune. There's a saying that if Krishna likes you, he'll give you whatever you're desiring. But if he really likes you, then he'll take everything away. because that way we have to completely depend on him. So travesty can be a form of mercy, and the things that would give anybody joy can also be a form of mercy. It's really just a matter of cultivating the vision by which we can experience whatever comes our way as something Krishna has arranged for us to expedite our spiritual advancement.
I can't tell you how many times I have thought since becoming a parent, when my private or alone time or time with, Ashley, who everyone on my channel has met many times by now, is taken away, right? Because of kid duties,
Mm-hmm.
that the picture of Krishna as the butter thief has come to my mind, right? Like, like Krishna has stolen some of these spaces that I used to have. They're not here anymore. And when I am able to, that story somehow pops up in my head, and I think about, my kids, I'm putting them to bed, they're demanding, they're fighting with each other, whatever. And I think of Krishna stealing the butter of my private time and
Mm-hmm.
making me, go through this and learn from this. I laugh. Like, not all the time, but sometimes it can actually make me laugh. And I think, I don't know, that's sort of what we're like, the lens that gets developed by practicing bhakti yoga. Not that it's there for me all the time, but like, it that actually has happened to me many times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Krishna is the foremost of thieves. And that's a great association to make, because Krishna is also time. In the material world, time is the representative of the power of God, because nobody can stop time. And it is also the most valuable thing we have. So when Krishna steals it, because he's the only person who's really capable of stealing your time, it may superficially seem like your children or your boss or somebody is stealing your time.
Right.
But ultimately, it's always Krishna. And so when we make that association that whenever something is stolen from us, oh, Krishna is the most expert thief.
Yeah.
Then that's a way of kind of transmuting that experience into something that would ordinarily make us grumble or be resentful, to a way of seeing Krishna present even in this particular circumstance.
I mean, that's one of the reasons that leads me to do this series that I do, which you may or may not have seen, but it's called Grabbed. So in every episode, I think we're on like 13 or 14 now. What I do is I as I'm talking about every astrological transit, I'll tell people use the hashtag grabbed, because of course the name for the planets in Indian astrology was graha, grabber, right? And it also had a dual meaning, as many words in Sanskrit do, and you taught me that. Grab, but also to grasp. And for the person who understands, it's nothing but the administration of the planets unfolding my karma. For one who understands that, what feels at first like I've been grabbed by a bad turn of fate, or something like that. When a person understands the planets are at work, suddenly they grasp that this is actually the hand of God at work in my life. So we have people share these stories, hilarious stories, about how the planets show up, from everything from a burst water pipe to, losing a parent to cancer, and we share these stories as a way of reminding ourselves, we what are we here doing in studying the transits? We're here to awaken a vision of God at work in our lives, that we experience these events so that we can see them as God's mercy and laugh and, and so forth. And people just love that series. Like, it's probably one of my most popular series I've ever done.
That sounds really wonderful. I hadn't been aware of it, and if it's this is something that's available.
Yeah, it's on the YouTube channel. There's a whole bunch of them. I'll send you one so you can check it out.
Okay, yes, I would love to, because that sounds like a wonderful way to understand the relationship between karma and the stars and God. The triangulation of that, and giving everyone a way to speak about it. It really sounds wonderful. I'd love to hear that.
I mean, if I had to say that there was the easiest bridge that I see for people who consume astrology and an interest in karma, it's that people who are interested in astrology usually come to astrology because they have a feeling that there is something intelligent behind the way that their experiences are unfolding. And they would also say that their experiences are naturally guiding them or teaching them about how to be a better person, or how to evolve, or how to become more spiritual. And they might call themselves spiritual but not religious, but they come to astrology because astrology somehow validates that their experiences have the fingerprints of God on them somehow. And that is, like, I would say, one of the number one reasons people get interested in astrology.
And that actually makes perfect sense, that to be able to see the intelligence at work behind the scenes. It's like getting a sense of, okay, there's a man behind the curtain. Now
Yeah.
I want to learn about the man behind the curtain and how.
Blue. He has a flute. He hangs out with a girlfriend named Radha. They hang out in the forest. No.
Well, I mean, when I first heard, oh, the man behind the curtain is like that, at first I thought, that is not what I was expecting.
I know.
That doesn't even make sense to me, that would be the person, behind the scenes who's, pulling all the levers. And at first it really sounded more like fairy tales than anything else to me, not even rising to the level of mythology. And it took a little while, but I eventually came to the conclusion that there is a whole comprehensive, sound philosophy that explains how that could actually make sense.
Yeah.
And not only that, I haven't found a better philosophy or a higher conception of a supreme being.
Yeah.
So as unlikely as it may sound at first, it's actually a remarkable conception of a supreme being.
Well, okay, so we'll zoom out for a second as we're closing here, and I'll ask you this question. If someone is listening to this content and with, the intention to learn, would that classify as a transcendental activity?
Yes, absolutely. It is the first transcendental activity, hearing. There are 9 processes of bhakti yoga. It's a science. It's an art and a science. And that science begins with hearing. So simply hearing transcendental knowledge from an authoritative source of transcendental knowledge immediately begins the process of bhakti yoga, by which karma is dissolved like a Alka-Seltzer.
Nice. On that note, I want to tell people, because we need to wrap up here.
Okay.
I want to tell people about how they can hear more about Bhakti Yoga, how they can take in more of the transcendental activity of Bhakti just by learning about it. And that is through your upcoming Bhagavad Gita class, which is something I've been very proud to help sponsor on my channel several years now. I think we've promoted this class. A lot of people from my audience have gone through it and just loved it. It is coming up again. I am going to switch our view here a little bit so that we can show some things. So you have a new Bhagavad Gita class starting on September 10th. There's lots of information about it, but why don't maybe just start by telling us a little bit about what this class entails. And my recommendation before you say anything is that this is essentially what I studied with Hari for a year. And has been deeply impactful for me. It really changed my life. So I highly recommend it. And in terms of like learning more about the science of bhakti, about karma, about all of these spiritual topics that we've been discussing today at length and being able to dive in depth with Hari, I just couldn't recommend him more highly. He is a beloved teacher, both me and my wife, and friends now too. Over the years, we worked at our yoga studio for a long time as our yoga philosophy guru on staff. So tell us, okay, with that being said, tell us about the Bhagavad Gita class coming up.
Thank you for all of that generous introduction to the course. Yeah, I've been very honored to be able to speak with you in the past about this course. And yes, many of the people who've been taking the course have come to the course through you. So this is a 12-session online course. It's people ask me, is it for beginners or is it for advanced students? It's an advanced class for beginners because it's a comprehensive introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. There'll be 9 live classes via Zoom on Saturdays at noon Eastern Time, and that'll run from September 10th through November 5th. There'll also be 3 live Q&A sessions, and those will be on Wednesday evenings from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. All of this will be recorded, so if you're not able to be there in real time, then you can always watch the recordings. And the recordings are going to live in a community space. I use a community platform that's kind of like a Facebook group without Facebook. So it's a private group that you automatically are part of when you sign up for the course. And it's a community setting where everyone who's taking the course can not just hear from me, but speak to one another, to share realizations, to speak about challenges. So there will be an ongoing conversation about the Bhagavad Gita for the entire length of the course and extending even beyond the course.
Nice. Yeah. I couldn't recommend studying the Bhagavad Gita highly enough, just aside from anything else. But if you also had to find an amazing teacher to study it with, Hari would be the one that I would recommend. You guys have also seen me promote a couple of my other teachers. This is something that I find really, really important. It's, next to my emphasis on why are we doing astrology and trying to bring it back to the spiritual intention behind studying and talking about astrology every day. I also talk a lot about the Bhagavad Gita, and you guys know every year in my Kickstarter, you'll see me in that video reading the Gita. I do a chapter a day every morning. And so the Bhagavad Gita, for people who are interested in these topics, in spirituality, yoga, astrology, karma, that you're fascinated by them, there's not a text that I have read that has a deeper impact on my life than the Gita. And Hari is one of 2 or 3 teachers in my life who have also completely transformed my life because of how they teach it. So I couldn't recommend it more highly. Now, enrollment is open for people who are watching this, and also there's a coupon code if you want to sign up. Now, you can find all of this. You can see the website at Hari-kirtana.com. There's an A on the end. Just I kind of messed that up, but
they're just to confuse people.
Yeah, sorry.
Silence.
So it's silent, yeah, but Hari-kirtana.com. And if you go to that website, then you'll see is it under the courses tab? I just want to make sure I got the tab right.
It'll be under live events.
Under live events. Okay, there. So you're going to go up to the live events tab to find the Bhagavad Gita course. Once you do, Hari's extended a special coupon code for people who watch my channel. Use the coupon code Nightlight, and that will get you a discount for the course, right, Hari?
It's a $100 discount. The class tuition is normally $297. So for your audience, $197.
Great. That is fantastic. Enrollment is open now if you want to join. It does end by September 7th, and the class starts on September 10th. So make sure that you register right away. Those Q&A sessions, by the way, having participated in those kinds of sessions with Hari many times before, I will tell you that they are amazing. So you can imagine if you were sitting here in the conversation with Hari and I today and just able to pop your hand up and ask questions. And I just, as someone who literally sat in Hari's apartment in DC and sat with him asking questions like that for a year, it is so much fun. And Hari is the best at just fielding things with a lot of humor and depth all at once. So again, I couldn't recommend it more highly. Hari, anything else that you want to promote or to point people to with your work?
No, this is enough shameless self-promotion for one. I think this will do. There'll be time for Q&A during the live classes themselves. These will be live. There will be plenty of breaks to make sure that everyone's following the bouncing ball. But I really like to have those 3 additional sessions that are really just for Q&A and also for sharing realizations. One of the things we'll do in the course is I'm going to give you a kind of a structure for sharing realizations, your understanding of what you're learning. Because sometimes it's not always easy to articulate what we've understood. So there's a bunch of bonus things that'll be hiding in here that will be tools for you to implement and help you speak about what you've understood from the course. And we'll use the Q&A sessions for that as well.
Right. I want to point people toward one more thing. Let's see. I'm pulling up your book right now. I want to point people toward it. Here it is.
Very nice.
So this is a book that Hari wrote that was the reason that I started studying with Hari, because I read this book and I loved it so much that I said, actually Ashley said you should check this book out. It is called In Search of the Highest Truth, Adventures in Yoga Philosophy, Hari-kirtana Das. So you will find this on Amazon if you search it, and it is a very manageable read insofar as its length. It's 166 pages, and I say this because I couldn't believe how much I learned, how accessible it was, how easy the reading was, and yet how deep it was for 166 pages. It was very impressive how you packed a real punch in how you wrote it. So I think people really like it, and a lot of it comes from live Q&A interactions with students in yoga teacher training programs as well.
Yeah, thank you very much for mentioning it. Yeah, 2/3 of the book are edited transcriptions of dialogue between myself and yoga teacher training students. So it was meant to address all of the most common questions that I got about yoga philosophy from yoga teacher training students. Mm-hmm. And therefore, what I hear back is, oh, yes, I had the same question, or I had the same kind of question. Yeah, and it's a lot cheaper than my course. Even with your Nightlight discount, it's $14.95 compared to $197. I think that's a deal you really can't beat.
But take the class, because there's nothing like going through the Gita with Hari. I will tell you that, even though the book is really great too.
Yeah. Now, also, when you go to visit my site to look at the course, I want you to notice that the color scheme on this webpage matches the color scheme of the Minnesota Vikings.
Yes.
Not by accident. I made it that way on purpose.
Nice. Well, thank you, Hari, so much for being here, for fielding questions. I think it was a really good talk, and maybe we'll have to return to this, because if any of you in listening to this have questions that you want to email as follow-ups, we'll store them and maybe do a future episode together. So email info@nightlightastrology.com, put Bhakti Q&A in the subject line if you have a question, and for any reason, yeah, I'm like using the force to bring the camera back to me.
Yeah, right.
If you have any questions about karma that we didn't address, or that you want us to take it further with, I'll store them up and see if I can get Hari back another time.
I'll be happy to come back anytime.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody, and we'll talk to you next time. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.